What if your child was taken from you? Not by a stranger in the dark, but by another family with the full backing of the law. This is the incredible 90-year story of a mother's fight for the truth, long after her son was stolen in plain sight. It's a case of mistaken identity, a staggering injustice, and a secret that lay buried for almost a century, tearing two families apart and leaving behind a mystery that only modern science could finally solve. It all starts in the humid summer of 1912 in Louisiana. Percy and Leslie Dunbar, a locally prominent couple, took their two sons on a fishing trip to Swayze Lake. On August 23rd, their oldest child, 4-year-old Bobby Dunbar, vanished. A frantic search kicked off immediately. Family and local authorities scoured the swampy, alligator-infested area, fearing the worst. Did he just wander off and get lost? Or did he fall into the murky water? An exhaustive search of the lake turned up nothing. As days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. The Dunbars, heartbroken but refusing to give up, put their son's face in newspapers across the country. They offered a reward that eventually grew to $6,000, a staggering amount at the time, worth over $200,000 today. The nationwide search dragged on for 8 agonizing months. With no body found, the theory shifted from a tragic accident to something far more sinister: kidnapping. The story of the missing boy from a respected family captured the nation's attention. Every lead was chased down, every rumor investigated. And then, just when it seemed like the case was permanently cold, they got a breakthrough. In April 1913, authorities in Mississippi got a tip about a boy who matched Bobby's description. The child was traveling with an itinerant handyman named William Cantwell Walters. To the police, it seemed like an open and shut kidnapping case. Walters was arrested on the spot, and the boy was taken into custody. The Dunbars got the call they had been praying for. They'd found a child who might be their long-lost Bobby. Walters, however, told a completely different story. He swore the boy wasn't Bobby Dunbar. He insisted the child's name was Charles Bruce Anderson, or just Bruce. He said the boy's mother, Julia Anderson, worked for his family and had willingly let him take her son on a trip. But in an era before phones and easy communication, his story was hard to prove and even easier to dismiss. To the authorities, he was a drifter, and now a suspected kidnapper. Percy and Leslie Dunbar rushed to Mississippi, their hearts pounding with hope and fear. But when they were finally presented with the boy, the reunion wasn't what anyone expected. Newspaper accounts from the time are all over the place. Some reported that the boy shouted, "Mother!" and that Leslie Dunbar fainted from relief. Others claimed the boy cried, and that Leslie herself hesitated, saying, "I do not know. I am not quite sure." Despite that initial jarring uncertainty, the Dunbars soon claimed him as their own. They pointed to scars and marks on his body that they said proved it was him. The press and the public, desperate for a happy ending, celebrated the miraculous return of Bobby Dunbar. There was even a parade in his honor in their hometown of Opelousas. But what everyone failed to realize was that another mother was about to arrive. A mother who would challenge everything they thought they knew. Her name was Julia Anderson. She was a field hand from North Carolina, unmarried and with very little money. When she heard that William Walters had been arrested and her son was now living with another family, she was frantic. Scraping together what she could, she traveled to Louisiana to get her child back. What happened next was a media and legal circus, but the deck was stacked against Julia from the very start. She was a poor, single mother in the early 20th century. The Dunbars were a respected, well-connected family. When Julia was finally brought face to face with the boy, the meeting was tense and inconclusive. Surrounded by the Dunbars, their lawyers, and their friends, Julia seemed to hesitate. The boy, who had just spent weeks in a large house with new toys and a pony, seemed distant and unsure. The newspapers, already biased against Julia and openly questioning her moral character for having a child out of wedlock, pounced on her hesitation. They painted her as a liar and an unfit mother. The next day, after being allowed to undress the boy and check for identifying marks, Julia stated with absolute certainty that he was her son, Bruce. But it was too late. Public opinion had already been decided. The legal battle was just as lopsided. Julia Anderson couldn't afford a lawyer to stand up to the Dunbar family's resources. The court ultimately sided with the people who had status, money, and the public's sympathy. The child would stay with the Dunbars. They had won. The law had officially declared the boy to be Bobby Dunbar. For Julia Anderson, it was a soul-crushing defeat. She returned to North Carolina, heartbroken. This story is a powerful reminder of how class, influence, and public perception can completely overwhelm the facts. If you're finding this story as fascinating as we do, take a second to like this video and subscribe for more historical mysteries that have been lost to time. With the boy officially declared to be Bobby Dunbar, the legal system turned its attention to the man accused of kidnapping him. William Walters was tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. He served 2 years before his conviction was overturned on a legal technicality. The state decided against a retrial, likely due to the high cost, and he was released. He was a free man, but his name had been dragged through the mud for a crime he didn't commit. Meanwhile, the boy at the center of it all grew up as Bobby Dunbar. He lived a life of comfort and privilege, the very life Julia Anderson could only have dreamed of for her son. He went on to marry, have 4 children of his own, and live a full life under an identity that wasn't his. He died in 1966, taking the secret of his true identity, a secret he probably never even knew himself, to his grave. For decades, the story of Bobby Dunbar was told as a thrilling tale with a happy ending. A lost boy, miraculously found and returned to his loving family. As for Julia Anderson, she went on to marry and have other children. But she never, ever forgot her firstborn son, Bruce. She told her other children about their long-lost brother, the boy the Dunbars had taken. For the rest of her life, she maintained that her son had been stolen. It seemed the truth had been buried forever. But the story doesn't end there. Decades later, one of the man known as Bobby Dunbar's own granddaughters began to have doubts. Margaret Dunbar Cutright started digging into the family legend after stumbling upon old newspaper clippings that hinted at the controversy. The story her family told was of a joyful reunion, but the historical records painted a picture of doubt, dispute, and a mother's desperate pleas. Margaret's investigation led her to the descendants of Julia Anderson, who had kept alive the story of their stolen brother, Bruce. For the first time, the two families, one built on a celebrated truth, the other on a foundation of loss, started talking. The mystery had survived for nearly a century, but now, in the early 2000s, a new tool could finally give them a definite answer: DNA testing. Margaret convinced her father, Robert Dunbar Jr., the son of the man at the heart of the case, to provide a DNA sample. That sample was then compared to the DNA of a son of the original Bobby Dunbar's brother, Alonzo. The world of 1913 relied on eyewitnesses and hazy memories. The world of 2004 relied on science. The question was simple: Would the DNA prove that Robert Dunbar Jr. was related by blood to his supposed first cousin? In 2004, the results came in. There was no match. The DNA was conclusive. The man who was raised, celebrated, and eventually buried as Bobby Dunbar was not biologically related to the Dunbar family at all. After 90 long years, Julia Anderson was vindicated. Her son had been taken from her. While the DNA couldn't prove the boy was Bruce Anderson, the overwhelming historical evidence made it almost certain. The respected family was wrong. The courts were wrong. An innocent man was jailed, and a poor mother's life was shattered by a system that refused to hear her. The revelation brought a sense of peace to Julia's descendants and finally cleared the name of William Walters. For the Dunbar family, it was a seismic shock, unraveling their entire family history and forcing them to face a painful truth. But it also leaves us with a haunting question. If the boy raised as Bobby Dunbar was really Bruce Anderson, what happened to the real Bobby Dunbar? The most likely theory is that he tragically died that day at Swayze Lake in 1912, either by drowning or an animal attack. His case remains, officially, a cold case, a disappearance with no final answer. The story is a tragic monument to a flawed justice system, the power of belief over fact, and a mother's love that was denied for nearly a century. What do you think really happened that day at Swayze Lake? And what does this case say about justice, class, and truth? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries of the past. Thanks for watching.